dollar back in the day came about from a receipt. That's how they got to this idea of a paper dollar, or a paper, whatever you want to call it, for an exchange of goods and services. But it was always backed by something. So how this started, for the most part, is a goldsmith. You would gather gold, exchange gold for goods and services, and silver, and then you had a whole bunch, and it wasn't secure wherever it is your dwelling was, your home and stuff, and it was hard to travel with and get from point A to point B. So what they would do is they would go to goldsmiths, and goldsmith would hold them for them, and then they would get receipts. The goldsmith would say on the receipt, "You have 10 ounces of gold with me." You know, they write that in the receipt, and that's how it went down. So you didn't have to carry your gold around with you. You knew it was there. Well, that was great. And then other people started doing that, and they didn't have to carry all this stuff with them and hold it wherever their dwelling was. And then as time went on, people started using those receipts for goods and services instead of going and getting the gold or the silver from the goldsmith and then exchanging that for the goods and services. They started using those receipts to get goods and services. They would say, "I would like this from you. Here's my receipt. I have this much gold here. You can go to the goldsmith and get it yourself. In lieu of me going and doing that, here's my receipt. You can have my receipt now that says you own the gold at the goldsmith, and I will take this good or service that you are offering." And that started, and that's pretty much how it went down. So pretty soon everyone was using these receipts for exchange instead of going and getting their gold, silver, and exchanging the physical gold and silver. They were exchanging the receipts because they were convenient, easier. It just simplified things. So that's what they did. And it was as good as gold. Those receipts were as good as gold. That's where the saying came from, as good as gold. So the people knew these are as good as gold. Well, then, as time went on, you can dive a little deeper into this. As time goes on, the goldsmiths got smart about this and said, well, people are coming to get their gold or silver, so we're going to, lend out some of it, and we'll hold a fraction of it in our safes, but we'll lend out more of these receipts to other people as they come. Basically, I'm just trying to be as simple as I can, as basic as I can for this, and speed up, and that's where that whole interest in the whole fractional banking came from. But anyways, on to my point. So that was backed by gold. So once we got into the dollars, and they tried that here and there, and the banks did, and they started doing the fractional reserve lending, and they got into trouble. There was run on banks. There were some issues, and then, lo and behold, government's going to save us, going to help us, as always, which does the exact opposite, in my opinion. But the Federal Reserve is born, 1913. So the Federal Reserve is going to be in charge of all this. And then the Federal Reserve is going to, their dollars will be backed by gold. So, in essence, the dollars, the notes you use for exchange, goods and services, were as good as gold because they're backed by gold or silver, depending on what countries you're talking about. So that was fine, and that's how it went down. And then they started doing the fractional thing. The banks started doing the fractional lending, and also the Federal Reserve started doing things to those points. Well, you fast forward, we're in the 30s. They took us off the gold standard at a certain level instead of being backed, almost fully. It wasn't exactly, but almost fully by gold. It was backed partially by gold. And that was fine, 30s to 71. 71, Nixon took us completely off the gold standard. Temporarily, he said. Temporarily is still here, so we're still temporarily taken off any sort of gold standard, the dollar. So it's just fiat, it's just paper. There's nothing backing it to today. So that's where we're at. So we went from using something that was as good as gold to using something that is as good as the paper it's printed on. That's it, period. End of story. What does that mean? That means that it has no use. When they're exchanging gold and silver have other uses. There's electronics, there's silver, there's a lot of this stuff with electronic cars. There's a lot of demand for silver there with the solar panels, a lot of demand for silver there. Jewelry, across the board, gold and silver. There's other uses for it. So you're exchanging something that has uses. Now, and since 1971, we're exchanging these pieces of paper that somebody else, a private company, private set of private banks called the Federal Reserve, has nothing to do with the federal government, has nothing to do with government, but they're private banks. They print, and then we use this for exchange of our goods and services because people accept it. If no one accepted it because they know there's no real value there, then the whole thing falls apart. No one wants it, it crashes. That's it. End of story. That's what happens with all these countries that have gone through hyperinflation. Zimbabwe, Argentina, Russia's been through some, Weimar Republic. It's always out there. The reason America has not, United States has not, is because we've been the world reserve currency for the most part. That's coming to an end. Other countries are coming off of the SWIFT network, that kind of stuff. So that's coming to an end. It's been slow a decade ago or so, and now it's ramping up faster because people are getting smart to this whole lie that there's nothing back in it, and the Federal Reserve continues to print and make more digits. So I try to think of some sort of comparison of what it's like using something somebody else uses or prints that tells you to use, and it loses its purchasing power fast, like our dollars. That's why stuff 10 years ago costs so much more nowadays. Stuff 30 years ago, if you buy it nowadays, it's extremely more expensive. And on the dollar level, but it would be the same ounces of gold where silver would have taken to buy 50 years ago than it does today. You compare that to the dollar, it's not even close. It's so much higher, and that's because there's been all this money printing. They call it quantitative easing. They call it, pick your other favorite name for it. Puppy printing money, happy currency dollars, whatever they want to call it. It's the same thing. It's making more digits, printing more money, and that the people who have it, work for it for a living, hold it, they lose purchasing power. The people at top doing it, they gain purchasing power right off the top. So they have nothing bad to say about it. As a matter of fact, they want to do more, and they are. So we haven't hit major inflation here. We have hit inflation. They wanted a standard 2% a year, and now they want even more. And if you go to the grocery store, you can see that inflation is here, and it's been here. Hyperinflation is when it jumps a lot really fast, and once that starts, you can't stop it. There's been some countries that have sort of put a speed bump here or there by changing the color and the size of the currency, calling it something else, getting rid of zeros. So people, as a whole, think it's something different when it's really not, and then it catches up to them, and that hyperinflates also. So I'm trying to think of a comparison. So imagine if we use ICE. Society uses ICE for exchange of goods and services. Why ICE? Well, ICE, there's blocks of ICE, there's cubes of ICE, that kind of stuff. And why I think it's a good comparison, other than the fact that someone else can make it, nature can make it also, I guess, if you live in the north. Besides the fact that someone else can make it, and you can make it yourself, if you don't think about those things, making it yourself, but someone else makes it. But go by weight. So if you're using ice for exchange and you're going to go by weight, so you have a block of ice that's, we'll call it 10 pounds, then you got a 2-pound block of ice, then you got, an 8-ounce block of ice, then you got cubes, your 1-ounce cubes, and you want to go to the store, you work, you got your 40 hours in, or whatever it is you work that week, you get paid in ice, weight of ice, and you want to go to the store to buy something. This thing cost $10, and you have your ice, and you got it from work, from working, and you go to buy that thing 3 weeks later than what you got it for when you made it, and you got paid. So once you got it 3 weeks later, you go to buy that thing, that block of ice is going to be worth less because it's lost some weight. That's just, ice melts, and that's what happens. So by the time you go to spend it, the purchasing power of it is worth less. It's nature, just what happens, and that's the same way with your dollar. I'm trying to think of a real simple example. This is off the cuff. So you get your dollar, you hold on to it, so you go to spend the money, let's say 6 months down the road. When you got it, the day you got it is worth the most it's ever going to be worth in purchasing power. That's it. If you buy something 6 months later, it's going to have a little less purchasing power. That's just the nature of this system we have. That's the nature of ice. So that's regular inflation. Hyperinflation is saying there's no freezers. You have no freezers. You have no way of keeping this ice frozen or even prevent it from melting more. It's sped up. Everywhere it's summer. There's no air conditioning. So whatever you have is melting, and you better use it right now, because if you wait another 5 minutes from now, it's going to buy you even less. That's hyperinflation. It's how fast it goes, and it doesn't last really long, because then once the dollar starts losing money or the ice starts losing weight, and it's in hyperinflation mode, it happens fast, and all of a sudden it just hits a wall and boom, it's done. No one accepts it because no one else will accept it. So why would, the first person accept it? That's sort of a comparison. Hopefully it's not, hasn't lost you too much. But anyways, sorry if it's a little confusing. So I'm trying to think of a good comparison of something that holds value that the government doesn't tell you holds value. So if you think about it, if in a prison system, you're in the prison, what's the thing that holds the most value, that is the best thing for exchange in prison, whether you smoke or not? It's cigarettes. Why? Well, because it's a high demand, and if someone else wants it, I want it, because I want to get something from them. So I want cigarettes. And then they also have a use. You can smoke it. And people that smoke want those for that also. Besides just the exchange, goods and services, it has a use. They're even more valuable than the dollars that I spoke about. It's not backed by gold. So now the Federal Reserve and the government are pushing a cashless society, all digital dollar. Last I read was by 2025 they want no cash ever, to be around, period. That's going to cause issues and problems. But why do they want this? Because they want more control. They don't want to have to print. They just want to have to, get their inflation there, or it's going to cost money to hold it in the Federal Reserve wallet. And you'll get paid, and you'll get paid a certain amount. If you don't spend it by the end of 30 days, it'll be worth even less. Not only less purchasing power, but you're going to have less there because it's going to start to disintegrate as the ice did, just melt away. So then they're going to control. They can know what you've purchased, where you've purchased, who you've dealt with, what you've sold, anything that you've been active with, exchange, society, they will know. And why is that bad? Well, if they think that you're overweight, You need to watch your diet because maybe you're on Medicare, or there's a health and insurance thing that you have through the state. They won't let you buy certain things because they see it's not fit. They won't let you buy certain medicines because they say you don't need it. You cannot buy guns and ammo. It's just all across the board. They can have control of everything, and they will. So that reminds me of a story that someone that I know, a buddy of mine, told me. It was recently. It was on Black Friday. He was out buying stuff with his family, and he had spent $2,000, almost $2,000, on his debit card, and he had over $7,000 in his bank account, and they stopped him at $2,000. He could not spend any more. And he called them, and he asked, "This is the bank." He said, "Why can I not use this? I have $7,000 more in my account. It says it's available. Why can I not spend past $2,000 today?" And they said, "Well, for your safety, for your good, this is what we have for everyone. We have a $2,000 maximum for 24 hours. And he's like, "You got to be kidding me. I have $7,000 more in my account. Why can't I spend it? It's a debit card. It's my money. That's just what we have, sir. If you want to spend more money, you have to wait 24 hours, and then we will free it up again to spend another $2,000. And this is a bank. This is a private bank. I'm sure they're regulated by the federal government, but they consider themselves a private bank. This is his private account, and he had that money in his bank account, but they would not let him spend it beyond. And this is the private bank. Think of what the government's going to do and the Federal Reserve's going to do. That's just an example. I mean, a real world example. So they will control what you do with it, when and where you spend it, and how you spend it. And they'll control it, make you spend it. If you don't want to spend it, they're going to make you spend it, or you're going to lose it. That's just what's going to happen. If people aren't spending money, there's no velocity, well, they're going to put an expiration date on stuff, and then you're going to want to go spend it before you lose it, because you'd rather spend it than lose it. I mean, that's just the way it's going to go. I just try to be self-aware of this stuff. I got videos on gold and silver. I know always you better yourself, get assets, make sure your family and yourself is protected. But as always, thank you for watching. Stay vigilant. Protect yourself, protect your health, protect your family, protect your wealth.